This time of year in the fall is one of the best times that you can actually do a very helpful thing for your lawn, which is called aeration. What aeration does is it basically takes, usually it takes a piece of the soil, of the ground around the grass and removes it. Because a lot of times what happens in the summer is when things really dry out, the ground tends to get more compacted. And compacted soil makes it harder for the grass to get its roots down, harder for nutrients and air and water to get into the root layer. So it's a good idea periodically to go in and aerate the lawn. And there's a few different tools that we'll talk about that can help you do that. But aeration is a pretty simple process, and it's something that looks like it might be dramatic and potentially cause damage to your lawn, but if anything, it actually helps it out quite a bit. So in this video, we'll talk about how you can quickly check to see if you might need to aerate your lawn, some different tools that you can use to aerate, and some other ways that aeration can be beneficial for you as well. So a quick way to check and see if you do need to aerate is using what's called a screwdriver test. And so with this, you take a just regular screwdriver and you stick it into the ground to see how far it goes. And if it can easily go all the way down, then you might not need to aerate. If you struggle with it, like I'm kind of struggling to get the screwdriver in, you probably do need to aerate. And I just did aerate the other day, so it does take some time for the aeration to take effect, and I'll explain that in a bit. But this is the test. It's called a screwdriver test to see how you're doing. And the nice thing with this too is as you put the screwdriver into the ground, you can feel if there are rocks and other debris in there too that you might need to be thoughtful about. Sometimes during the summer and other hot periods, you'll see dry patches around your lawn, and in many cases when you do a screwdriver test and if you feel some big rocks, that's usually where you'll find the dry patches. So it's beneficial for a couple of reasons. So it's good to do the screwdriver test. It's a good idea to really soak the ground first, because if you try to do that into a really hard ground, you're not going to get in there and pull a good core of dirt out. Whether it's, again, like with this, if you just have a dry spot, you want to use the hose and hose down that area for a good few minutes or up to like 10 minutes or so to really get that ground moistened up so that you can actually be more successful. And similarly with the handheld core aerator or the mechanical core aerator, you want to either run your sprinklers or make sure you do it right after a good rain. So like when I had the mechanical aerator out this last week, I did run the sprinklers for quite a while, so it loosened up the ground and got it moist, so that way the core aerator could pull out pretty good cores. Unfortunately, and why this video is a week separation of having the lawn mechanically aerated versus this part is right after, like immediately right after they came out to aerate, we had an atmospheric river, which is exactly what it sounds like. Basically in our weather system, in the atmosphere, we had this torrential rain for a few days to the point where I could not get outside to do anything. And so here I am about a week later filming the first part of this video. So when we talk about aeration, there's a few different tools that you can use, and one of them is not pictured, but you'll see it here in just a bit. First of all, there's usually you find aerators in these, basically they look like forks, and there's a couple of differences with what you see right here. This is an aerator that doesn't have any hollow tube, so it doesn't pull a core, it just punches holes into the ground. And similarly, you can use like a pitchfork or other tool like that to essentially get some holes into the ground, and that will start to allow water and nutrients to get in there. The disadvantage with something like, there's advantages and disadvantages with all of these, of course, but the advantage of this type of aerator is that it's really good if it's the middle of summer, it's hot, you have a pretty dead, drying patch, or not dead, but like a patch that's struggling. It's a good way if you soak it and like get this aerator to start punching holes in there to get the soil loosened up and to get it essentially get some more moisture down into the soil. It'll help to enable that to happen, to get things to loosen up and to help the roots and to help the grass come back. The disadvantage of this is that it's not actually removing any soil, so the problem of compaction just kind of moves around. Now, what you can do is you can get an aerator like this that puts holes and pulls out some of the actual dirt, so it is removing some of that material. And the good thing with that is that it more permanently solves the problem for you. So something like this is a product by Lanzi. There's other similar aerators out there. It's kind of cool. Here, I'll come a little bit closer so you can see that in the fork, there's the holes that go into the ground, and the dirt gets pulled out into there and comes out. And many of you have probably bought aerators from some of the big box stores like I have in the past, and those tend to jam up quite a bit. I've tried a few, and this is the one that I found to work really pretty well. It's not foolproof. As you can see, I do have a chunk of dirt stuck in there from before, which I'll just pull out. So sometimes it does still get stuck, but it's much less likely to get stuck with something like this, because it has this, instead of a long tube, it has just a cutout, and the dirt goes in and it falls out pretty easily. So I've been really pretty happy with this one. And an aerator like either one of these, and this is up close what the aerator without the holes looks like up close, but the advantage with both of these is they're really quick, they're cheap, you can have them on hand so that you can just aerate a part of your lawn. If it gets to be more than like 100 square feet or 10 square meters, you're probably going to want to do it with a machine, because it'd be a little exhausting to go over a 5,000 square foot lawn with one of these handheld manual aerators. Which gets into the third option, which is a mechanical corator. And a mechanical corator is a device that looks a lot like a lawnmower. It's a big, heavy piece of equipment. If you're to buy one, they'd be thousands of dollars. So usually what you do is, at many rental companies, you can rent or hire a mechanical corator that you'll push, and it pulls out cores that way. And you can cover a big distance in a short amount of time. It's a lot easier, and it does a better job, frankly. So it's a really good idea to get a mechanical corator, or what I do, again, because it usually costs thousands of dollars to own one. It takes up a lot of space, and then if you're to rent one and do it yourself, it's usually upwards of $100 US on up. So if you can find a local company that does that, that's a good thing to actually just pay someone to do. So I usually do most things myself, but twice a year I hire a local company to come out and aerate my lawn with the mechanical corator, which you'll see here in just a second. All right, so let's take a look at how you actually use one of these manual corators. So I have here the Lanzi corator, and you basically, just like a shovel, you step down on it, and sometimes you have to kind of wiggle around to really get it down into the soil. And when you pull up, you'll see that there are there's dirt that's left behind. Sometimes, depending on how the soil is, it'll pop out. My soil's still a little bit compact, so it's really stuck in there. And so, kind of like using the screwdriver test, you might have to use a screwdriver to pry the soil out of here. So that's how one of these manual corators works. And then using one of these just tined non-core aerators, it's pretty simple, pretty similar to the other manual aerator. Well, that's hard to say. Where you just use it like a shovel, so you push down, and it just punches some holes into the soil. Again, this is really great if you just want to simply get in there and your soil's too compact to really pull cores out. It's a good way to just like kind of get started and get some water down into that area. And once things start to loosen up, then you can use a corator a little bit easier on a future project. So that's the manual aerator without the cores. Another option is mechanical coration. I'm joined here with Cody from Lawn Doctor in the Seattle area. So there's a bunch of different ways to aerate your lawn. This is a really great way to do it, probably the best way to do it, because it's actually pulling the plugs out of the lawn. And we'll see how that works here in just a second. was saying, one of the big advantages of core aeration, or the real advantage of core aeration, is that you basically punch these holes into the soil itself. And without that, the soil is really compacted. And so by doing that, by pulling these plugs, it essentially loosens up the material, because what happens over time is these holes will start to fill in and things will start to redistribute. But in the meantime, you have these really good pockets like this, where water, nutrients, and air can get in to the root layer to really help the grass thrive. And there's a couple other benefits as well. So imagine you're doing a seeding project and you're using a broadcast spreader or drop spreader to do the grass seed. You'll see that a lot of it just gets broadcast around and it'll stay in these spots. But ideally, you'll have some that go into these pockets like this, and it'll be in a much better spot to be successful. So that's one of the big advantages of having aeration when you're doing a seeding project. And lastly, another helpful thing that you can do when you're aerating is to do the top dressing at the same time. And a lot of you do top dressing with sand because sand will help level out the lawn. You can see that my lawn looks pretty level, but as I use my lawnmower, it bumps around. So that's why it's a good idea to top dress with sand. And if you do aeration first, then what it does too is it creates these, again, pockets to where when you're aerating or when you're leveling with sand, the sand will start to fill in those pockets. And so instead of having really compact soil, you'll start replacing that compact soil with sand that helps with drainage and other issues like that. So again, it's a good idea to aerate before you top dress with sand. One of the other things that's important too, before you top dress with sand, is to pull the cores out, or to actually rake the cores up. Because what happens is if you put a lot of sand over the lawn, and you try to use a lawn level or leveling rake, your leveling rake will start bumping into those cores and it'll make a pretty difficult leveling experience. So you do want to aerate, rake up the cores, distribute the sand, and level it. So that's going to be the process with that. All right, well, that does it for core aeration. I hope you found this video helpful. And if you did, please do feel free to like the video, which really helps the YouTube gods know to smile upon me and the Lawnspiration channel. And also do subscribe to the channel so you can get more tips and tricks on how to improve your landscape, and just to be inspired on some of the different ideas and things that you can do to make your lawn and your landscape look a little bit nicer. In a future video, I'll also talk a little bit more about dethatching or power raking or scarifying. So there's a lot of different names for that, which is a close sibling to core aeration in ways that you can help get nutrients to the root zone of your grass. So look forward to that in a future video.